Have you ever wondered if everything you've been told about love and relationships is a carefully crafted illusion? What if the romanticized notions of soulmates, emotional connections, and gender roles have been clouding your perception for years? Nietzsche, the philosopher who challenged conventional wisdom, uncovered some shocking truths about love, power, and the roles men and women play in relationships. His insights might make you rethink everything you thought you knew. In today's video, we're diving deep into Nietzsche's perspective on modern relationships and the illusions that shape them. We'll explore the hidden power dynamics between men and women, the myths of the perfect relationship, and the truth about emotional labor and subtle influence. If you've ever felt like your relationships don't live up to the fairy tale, stick around because by the end of this video, you'll gain powerful tools to see your relationships in a whole new light. Ready to uncover the truth? Let's get started. The illusion of perfection in love, how society shapes our expectations from the moment we're born. We're bombarded with messages about love. Movies, books, and even our families tell us that love is supposed to be pure, ideal, and free of conflict. But is that really true? Or are we simply living in an illusion, one that holds us to unrealistic standards that only lead to disappointment? In modern society, we're often told that love should feel effortless, like a fairy tale come true. The idea of soulmates is ingrained in our culture, with the belief that there's one perfect person out there for each of us. This image is repeated in countless romantic comedies, novels, and even social media posts. But Nietzsche, in his philosophical works, argued that this perception of love as a flawless, destined bond is an illusion, a dangerous one that causes more harm than good. The illusion of the perfect relationship, this idealized image of love, creates a dangerous set of expectations. We are taught to believe that love should be without struggle. We expect constant passion, harmony, and mutual understanding. When these things don't materialize, we feel like failures or, worse, like we've chosen the wrong partner. What we fail to understand is that love, in its truest form, isn't supposed to be perfect. Love is messy, complex, and challenging. It involves two individuals who bring their own needs, desires, insecurities, and flaws into the relationship. By expecting love to fit this idealized mold, we set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. The psychology behind idealized love. From a psychological perspective, the reason we buy into this illusion of perfect love has a lot to do with how our brains process emotions and desires. The brain is wired to seek validation and satisfaction. The concept of soulmates feeds into this need by promising us a perfect match who will make us feel complete. However, this notion doesn't leave room for the inherent imperfections that come with being human. Moreover, this desire for perfection often leads us to ignore the complexities of our relationships. We become so obsessed with finding the right person that we forget that personal growth, communication, and emotional investment are far more important than finding someone who meets all the ideals of society. Nietzsche's challenge to this idea is clear. Love isn't about finding perfection, it's about navigating the complexities of human connection. The psychological toll of unrealistic expectations. When we buy into this myth of perfect love, we set ourselves up for emotional distress. The pressure to meet these impossible standards can create feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and resentment in both partners. Instead of embracing the uniqueness of our relationships, we compare them to an ideal that doesn't exist. This leads to the damaging belief that if our relationship isn't flawless, something is wrong. In reality, every relationship will face difficulties, whether it's miscommunication, personal insecurities, or external stressors. Recognizing that love is a journey, not a destination, is key to managing these challenges. Gender roles and hidden power dynamics in relationships. Nietzsche's perspective on gender and relationships is both unsettling and eye-opening. He observed that men and women are not equals in the true sense of the word, not because one gender is inherently superior to the other, but because of the illusions that have been created about power and influence. These illusions are so deeply embedded in society that we don't even question them. How gender roles shape power in relationships. For centuries, society has imposed rigid gender roles. Men are taught to be dominant, assertive, and outwardly powerful, while women are often socialized to be passive, nurturing, and emotionally attuned. While we like to think of ourselves as living in an era of equality, the remnants of these historical power structures are still prevalent today. Nietzsche's analysis of gender was ahead of his time. He didn't just see women as oppressed, he saw the power dynamics at play. Women, for example, may not have had formal political power or the ability to directly dominate social structures, but that didn't mean they were powerless. Instead, women developed subtle forms of power. They mastered the art of influence, not through overt control, but through the ability to manipulate perception, create emotional bonds, and navigate societal expectations with skill and finesse. Subtle power and influence. The art of seeming. One of the most striking aspects of Nietzsche's philosophy is his recognition of the art of seeming, the subtle, almost invisible ways that women wield power. Women, he argued, had to become masters of appearance in order to survive in a world that constantly judged them by their external qualities. This power wasn't necessarily manipulative, but it was strategic. Through charm, grace, and emotional intelligence, women influenced the people around them, especially men, without appearing to do so. This was a survival mechanism in a society where women were excluded from traditional forms of power and influence. Over time, this subtlety became an instinctive skill, one that wasn't just learned, but passed down through generations. The hidden cost of this subtle power. While women developed these subtle forms of power, Nietzsche observed that it often came at a significant emotional cost. The emotional labor required to maintain these delicate balances of influence can be exhausting. Women had to navigate complex social dynamics, constantly aware of how they were being perceived, while also maintaining the illusion of fragility and gentleness. This created a system where women were forced to give more than they received in relationships. They were expected to be emotionally available, nurturing, and self-sacrificial. Yet, when their emotional labor went unacknowledged or was seen as a duty, rather than a gift, resentment began to build. This invisible burden became a silent source of conflict in many relationships. The psychological impact on women. Psychologically, this dynamic can be incredibly taxing. The pressure to maintain an idealized version of femininity, one that is caring, selfless, and emotionally available, can lead to feelings of frustration, burnout, and even depression. When women's emotional needs go unmet, or when they feel unappreciated, the result is often a sense of isolation and frustration. For men, this dynamic can be confusing. They may believe that they are being caring or generous, but they often fail to recognize the extent of emotional labor their partners are carrying. The result is a disconnect between the two, where both are unable to fully understand or appreciate each other's emotional experiences. The cost of the soulmate myth. The concept of the soulmate suggests that there is one perfect person for each of us. This myth has been romanticized in literature, movies, and society at large. But Nietzsche's critique of this idea challenges its very foundation. Love as a negotiation, not a fairy tale. According to Nietzsche, love isn't about finding someone who meets all of your ideals and completes you. It's about navigating a complex, often uncomfortable negotiation of needs. Men and women often enter relationships with different unconscious desires. For men, the desire for transcendence, emotional salvation, and beauty are primary, while for women, the desire for stability, strength, and security often outweighs other factors. The soulmate myth ignores these fundamental differences in needs and motivations. When we hold on to this illusion, we assume that love should feel easy and effortless. We expect our partners to fulfill our deepest needs without ever acknowledging that those needs might be different, even contradictory, from their own. The tension between expectations and reality. When these mismatched needs and expectations are not addressed, tension arises. Men and women both bring different psychological needs to the table. Men may expect to find emotional fulfillment and transcendence in their partners, while women may seek security and strength. These differences are often masked by the language of love, loyalty, and devotion, but the reality is far more complex. By recognizing that love is not a simple meeting of needs, but rather a negotiation of desires and vulnerabilities, we can start to break free from the illusions that create conflict in relationships. Instead of clinging to the fantasy of the perfect partner, we can embrace the reality of love as a dynamic, evolving force that requires communication, compromise, and mutual understanding. The psychology of attraction and dependency. Why we are drawn to illusions. When we talk about attraction in relationships, we often focus on the physical, emotional, and psychological factors that draw us towards someone. However, Nietzsche saw something more profound at play. He believed that our attraction is often not to the person as they are, but to an image or projection of what we desire in them. This idea brings us to a deeper psychological truth. The attraction we feel is often shaped by illusions, not reality. The power of projection in attraction. One of Nietzsche's most striking insights was that men and people in general rarely fall in love with the real person in front of them. Instead, they fall in love with a projection of the person, an idealized image based on their desires, fantasies, or unmet needs. This process of projection is rooted in our psychological need to find fulfillment, stability, and safety. For men, women often embody purity, innocence, and beauty, qualities that represent emotional or spiritual salvation. Psychologically speaking, this projection creates a sense of longing and desire for the ideal partner, who exists not as a real individual but as an image we construct in our minds. This illusion makes it easier for us to ignore the complexities and imperfections of the person we are attracted to. However, Nietzsche warned that this projection ultimately leads to disappointment and heartbreak because the idealized image cannot be sustained in reality. The role of dependency in relationships. The desire to idealize a partner is often rooted in emotional dependency. We crave someone who can fulfill our emotional needs, someone who can make us feel whole, safe, or complete. This dependency can be both conscious and unconscious, and it plays a major role in how we form attachments to others. In relationships, this emotional dependency creates an imbalance of power. When one person becomes too reliant on the other for emotional fulfillment or validation, it can lead to resentment, frustration, and even codependency. Nietzsche's critique of dependency focuses on how it creates illusions of control and fulfillment, illusions that can never truly be met because they are based on fantasy. Breaking the cycle of illusions and dependency. To break free from these illusions, Nietzsche suggests that we must confront the reality of our dependencies and projections. True intimacy in relationships comes not from idealizing or relying on a partner to fulfill all of our emotional needs, but from learning to engage with them as they truly are. It's about moving away from fantasy and embracing the complexity of the other person, seeing them as a whole individual rather than a reflection of our desires. For those looking to create healthier relationships, it's essential to recognize when projections are taking place and to work on developing a sense of self-worth and emotional independence that doesn't rely on a partner to feel complete. This shift will allow for more honest, balanced connections where both people can thrive as individuals while still being connected. The myth of mutual understanding. Why relationships aren't always about harmony. The modern myth of love is that relationships should be about mutual understanding, harmony, and the merging of two souls into one. But Nietzsche believed that this myth is one of the most damaging illusions of all. According to Nietzsche, relationships are not about finding perfect harmony, they are about negotiating different needs, desires, and instincts. The tension between different motives in relationships. In Nietzsche's view, men and women enter relationships with different unconscious motives. Men often seek beauty, transcendence, and emotional salvation, while women often seek stability, security, and strength. These different needs are often unspoken, but they influence every interaction within a relationship. The belief that both partners should want the same thing creates a dangerous illusion of mutual understanding, one that, in reality, may never exist. For many, the idea of being soulmates suggests that two people are perfectly aligned in every way, but this is rarely the case. Instead, each person in the relationship brings their own unique set of desires, needs, and vulnerabilities. When these differences are not acknowledged or addressed, tension arises. Why the myth of harmony fails. As the myth of mutual understanding, why relationships aren't always about harmony. The modern myth of love is that relationships should be about mutual understanding, harmony, and the merging of two souls into one. But Nietzsche believed that this myth is one of the most damaging illusions of all. According to Nietzsche, relationships are not about finding perfect harmony, they are about negotiating different needs, desires, and instincts. The tension between different motives in relationships. In Nietzsche's view, men and women enter relationships with different unconscious motives. Men often seek beauty, transcendence, and emotional salvation, while women often seek stability, security, and strength. These different needs are often unspoken, but they influence every interaction within a relationship. The belief that both partners should want the same thing creates a dangerous illusion of mutual understanding, one that, in reality, may never exist. For many, the idea of being soulmates suggests that two people are perfectly aligned in every way. But this is rarely the case. Instead, each person in the relationship brings their own unique set of desires, needs, and vulnerabilities. When these differences are not acknowledged or addressed, tension arises. Society often tells us that love is about finding perfect harmony, but Nietzsche argued that true love is not about blending two lives into one seamless unit. Instead, love involves two individuals with different psychological motives and needs coming together and learning to navigate these differences. This process of negotiation is key to any successful relationship, and it requires vulnerability, communication, and a willingness to accept imperfection. The myth of mutual understanding assumes that both partners should be in perfect sync, which leads to unrealistic expectations and disappointment when that harmony doesn't emerge. Rather than viewing love as a perfect union, it's important to see it as a balancing act, one that requires continuous effort and adaptation from both parties. The reality of conflict in relationships. Nietzsche's perspective on relationships is more realistic and less idealized than what we are taught to believe. Conflict, rather than being a sign of failure, is an inherent part of relationships. It arises from the natural differences between partners, differences in desires, needs, and experiences. Instead of trying to eliminate conflict or expect complete harmony, Nietzsche suggests we learn to embrace and manage it. By accepting that relationships are complex and inherently imperfect, we can move away from unrealistic expectations and focus on creating a connection that is rooted in honesty, respect, and mutual growth. The unseen cost of emotional labor, how women bear the burden in relationships. One of the most overlooked aspects of relationships is emotional labor, the invisible work that often goes unacknowledged. Especially when it comes to women. Emotional labor refers to the work that people put into managing their own emotions and the emotions of others, and it is disproportionately carried by women in most relationships. The hidden burden of emotional labor. Women, historically, have been expected to maintain emotional harmony in their relationships. This means managing conflict, providing emotional support, and taking on the lion's share of caretaking and nurturing roles. These tasks are often seen as a woman's duty in a relationship, but the emotional labor involved can be overwhelming. Nietzsche saw this dynamic as a form of power, one that is often undervalued and overlooked. The psychological impact of emotional labor. The psychological toll of emotional labor is profound. Women often feel a sense of responsibility for the emotional well-being of their partners, families, and communities. This constant emotional work can lead to burnout, frustration, and resentment. Women may feel unappreciated for the care and emotional support they provide, which can cause them to withdraw or feel disconnected from their partners. The unacknowledged emotional labor can also create a sense of imbalance in the relationship. where one partner feels drained while the other remains oblivious to the amount of work being done behind the scenes. Nietzsche understood that this imbalance, though subtle, was a significant source of tension in relationships. Recognizing and addressing emotional labor in relationships. In order to create healthier relationships, it's crucial to recognize the role of emotional labor and address the imbalance. Both partners need to share the responsibility for emotional work, rather than one person carrying the entire load. For men, this means acknowledging the emotional needs of their partners and being proactive in supporting them. For women, it involves setting boundaries and ensuring that their emotional labor is recognized and valued. Learning to balance emotional labor in relationships can prevent feelings of resentment and ensure that both partners feel supported and valued. This shift is essential for creating a more equitable and fulfilling connection. The art of seeming: how women navigate power through appearance. Throughout history, women have had to develop subtle ways to navigate a world that often dismisses their authority. Nietzsche referred to this as the art of seeming, a survival mechanism that allowed women to influence their surroundings without overtly asserting power. Mastery through appearance. In a society where women were often denied direct power or influence, they learned to wield power through perception. By mastering the art of seeming, using charm, grace, and emotional intelligence, they shaped how others saw them and, in turn, how others acted toward them. This subtle influence was a form of power that was invisible to most, but deeply effective in shaping outcomes. The psychological strategy behind seeming. Psychologically, the art of seeming is a form of adaptive behavior. Women, often excluded from direct forms of authority, had to find ways to influence without confronting or challenging directly. This is where the use of charm, restraint, and subtle communication became key. By playing on the perceptions of others, women were able to influence decisions, shape behaviors, and even secure their own survival in a male-dominated world. The empowering nature of subtle power. While this form of power may seem passive or manipulative to some, Nietzsche recognized it as a form of intelligence and adaptation. Not weakness. The ability to influence without appearing to dominate is an incredibly powerful skill, one that often goes unnoticed but plays a significant role in shaping outcomes in relationships and society. Nietzsche's insights into gender, power, and love continue to challenge conventional wisdom about relationships today. By breaking free from the illusions of perfect love, embracing the complexities of our differences, and acknowledging the often invisible labor that sustains relationships, we can start to build healthier, more authentic connections. These lessons from Nietzsche are not about condemning relationships but rather about uncovering the truth beneath the masks we wear. When we can move past these illusions, we open ourselves up to a deeper, more honest kind of love, one that recognizes each person as a whole, imperfect human being. The cost of the soulmate myth: rethinking our expectations of love. We've all heard the stories, the ones where two people meet, fall in love instantly, and live happily ever after. The idea of the soulmate has been romanticized for centuries, creating a societal expectation that love should be effortless and without flaw. But Nietzsche challenges this idea by pointing out that this is not only unrealistic but also destructive to the foundation of genuine relationships. The notion of a perfect, predestined partner who fulfills all your emotional and psychological needs is an illusion, one that prevents us from truly understanding the complexities of love. The myth of perfect harmony. When we expect someone to be our one and only, we place them on a pedestal, hoping they will meet every need we have. This myth encourages us to seek a perfect union, a harmonious blending of two lives into one. However, this isn't reality. True love is not about merging perfectly with another person. Instead, it is about navigating differences, conflicts, and imperfections together. When we seek a perfect soulmate, we often overlook the complexity of love itself. Relationships aren't just about finding someone who complements us in every way. They're about the ability to communicate, compromise, and grow together despite our differences. The soulmate myth makes us think that love should come naturally and smoothly, but in truth, relationships require constant work, effort, and understanding, reevaluating what we expect from love. If we let go of the notion that our partner must be a flawless match, we free ourselves from the pressure of needing to fit an idealized image. Instead, we can embrace the reality that love is about understanding, growing, and adapting to each other. This shift in mindset allows us to view love as an ongoing journey, not a destination. It invites us to be more patient and forgiving, recognizing that love isn't perfect and that we don't need to find someone who checks off every box. What matters most is whether we can face life's challenges together with mutual respect, trust, and a willingness to work through differences. How to apply this in your life? To move beyond the soulmate myth, start by rethinking your own expectations. Ask yourself, do you expect your partner to be everything to you? Are you placing unrealistic pressure on them to meet every need you have? Try to embrace a more flexible and realistic view of relationships. One where growth and understanding are prioritized over perfection. Allow yourself to experience love as a complex, evolving journey where both partners are free to be their authentic selves. The final truth about illusions in relationships. In the final analysis, Nietzsche's ideas aren't about condemning love or relationships. They're about stripping away the illusions that hinder us from experiencing authentic connection. The myths we hold about love, power, and gender roles only serve to keep us trapped in cycles of misunderstanding and unmet expectations. Only when we face the uncomfortable truths about these illusions can we begin to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. The uncomfortable truth about love. The truth is, love is not a fairy tale. It's not a perfect alignment of hearts and minds, and it isn't about finding someone who fulfills every fantasy we've ever had. Love, according to Nietzsche, is about embracing the complexity of human relationships. It's about seeing your partner as they are, not as you wish them to be. This involves confronting uncomfortable realities, like the fact that both men and women enter relationships with different unconscious needs and desires. Recognizing these differences and navigating them consciously is the key to building lasting and meaningful connections. Embracing clarity and honesty. Nietzsche's ultimate message is one of clarity, shedding the illusions that cloud our perception of relationships and facing the truth about love and power. When both partners can stand together without their illusions and projections, that's when something real and lasting can emerge. This clarity allows for genuine intimacy, where both individuals can exist in their fullness and imperfection. How to apply Nietzsche's insights in your own relationships. As you reflect on your own relationships, ask yourself, are there any illusions you're holding on to? Do you have unrealistic expectations of your partner or your relationship? Let go of the myths of perfection and instead focus on building a relationship based on honesty, understanding, and mutual growth. Embrace the complexities of love and relationships, knowing that they are not about finding someone who checks every box, but about navigating life's challenges together with trust and respect. Conclusion: seeing through the masks to build real love. Nietzsche's critique of modern love challenges us to reconsider everything we've been taught about relationships. He urges us to look beyond the masks, illusions, and myths that cloud our understanding of love and power. In doing so, we can create deeper, more authentic connections. If you've found these insights helpful, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about Nietzsche's take on love and relationships? Have you experienced any of the illusions he speaks of? And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Transformative Thoughts for more videos that help you challenge surface-level ideas and uncover deeper truths about yourself and the world around you. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, true love begins when we see each other as we truly are, without the masks, illusions, and projections.